All right. Well, welcome to the January 2024 uh, Arlington Senior Democratic Lunch. We have two guests today, uh, and our first is Chen Ling, who's a candidate for the Arlington School Board. He announced last Wednesday night. He is a very accomplished person and has a lot of different civic engagement, but we'll let him introduce himself. I give you now Chen Ling.
Talking to here, or should I talk to?
Well, if you're smart, you can do both.
Hi, Karen. I'll try to better this.
Can
Uh,
everybody hear?
Hi, my name's Chen Ling. I'm running for school board. A bit about myself. My wife and I moved to Arlington 11 years ago. She grew up in the general area. Her family's all mostly in Maryland, with some in Virginia, some in Pennsylvania. So this is why we moved back to the area. And when we moved back, we picked Arlington because the community here is, I feel like, better than almost anything in the surrounding area, and the schools are amazing. In a way that's not toxic, which we'll into in a little bit. But anyhow, I have a third grader at Ashland Elementary, my daughter there, and my son is going to be in kindergarten at Ashland next year. He was in preschool this morning. He's almost done with that. And The reason why I'm running for school board is I've been watching a lot of, so we started off with the boundary process with some of our friends from Boulevard Manor last year, and then for middle school this year. And as an upset parent of the process, right, I looked at, okay, this is just, when I asked questions, they never had the right answers. And it became apparent it's not they didn't want to share the answers with us, that they didn't have the answers. And that meant that they didn't have the right data, they didn't have the right decision-making tools to make the best decisions. So instead of complaining, I decided to fix the problem, or try to fix the problem. So I have a background in software and data science. I'm a director of engineering at what's the largest company you guys have never heard of, called Centene Corporation. We're the second largest health insurance company in the country. Centene, if as Arlington seniors, if you've heard of WellCare, that's us for Medicare Advantage, but mostly we run Medicaid for about 30 some states. We're also one of the two military TRICARE providers. So if you're west of the Mississippi and you're a family member of a military person, we're your health insurance company. We're heavily invested in the Affordable Care Act marketplace, but we do a lot of government-sponsored healthcare. We insure about 16 million Americans. But what I do at work is creating data systems for transparent decision making. So I thought this would be a very applicable thing for Arlington School Board, because when I watch the school board work, they do a lot. They're juggling too many things, and they don't have the right tools to make the right decisions. But they're trying really hard, but they just don't have the tools, right? So for the boundary conditions, they gave some data to a consultant. The consultant came back with an answer, and that's it. That is the proposal, and this is a pretty standard process, right? Because for the school board, they don't specialize in that sort of thing. So you have someone who specializes in that sort of thing give you an answer, and because of that process, there's no mechanism to change it based on new information. So what I'm trying to do as one thing is to create a process in place so that we can create the technological tools and the processes in place to create better decision making at the school board level. And that's something that I hope that will be sustainable long after I'm gone and no longer on the school board. Not for a while, but someday, I'm gonna, right? I'm hoping to do this for a while. I really want to guide this process and see it through, because Arlington is so great, right? And when during one of the school board meetings that I was at, there were 3 data scientists sitting at the table that I was at, right? They were like, "Your data's wrong," and they're like, "Okay, we don't have a mechanism to change it," right? And Arlington's the most educated county in the country. We want to use that as much as possible. So that's one thing that I want to do. The second thing is almost related, which is teachers. My neighbor and I were part of a book club that we talked to a lot of teachers, and the amount of complaints that I get it's not the students, it's not even the parents. It's every year something about the curriculum changes, something about the policy changes. They have to fill out new reports, usually via paper or via Excel spreadsheets, and they spend hours doing this. And I want to automate that process, and I also want to remove the number of changes they have to do so that they can focus on teaching. Right? There are so many distractions. Teachers come teach not because it's a lucrative field. They do it because they love teaching. And anything that takes them away from the teaching is a reason why they would leave. And I want the teachers to stay. I want to teach because I want the teachers to stay and grow as teachers and become better teachers. And I want them to focus on teaching and not all the other distractions that they're currently faced with. And the third thing that I want to do is reduce class sizes. I know that is a very difficult challenge. It's a multifaceted problem with districting and how large schools are and all those things. But I feel like we can make improvements on the margins, and even small changes to class sizes has huge impacts on the class. If you can reduce just fewer kids, like 2 or 3 fewer kids per class, the teachers can again focus on the students more, figure out, oh, this child is having problems. Let me talk to the parent, because now I have time to talk to the parent instead of waiting until report cards come out, waiting until the standards of learning tests come out, and all that time to have conversations. Right. So that's what I want to do. Those are my 3 priorities. I think the other school board members are great. I think they have a lot of other priorities that they're focusing on, trying to address all the inequalities that's happening, all the lack of learning from the pandemic and all the learning loss that happened. And I think as a team, we can make a lot of progress. So that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I get the privilege of the first question. It turns out that there are things done at the state level with the State Board of Education and things done by the local Board of Education. And, how do you feel about the current trend in the State Board of Education, particularly with appointees of Governor Young?
I think that a lot of policies, federal, state, local, they can be interpreted different ways. And some of them so regardless of who the administration is, right? Even no matter how well-meaning the policies are, there's always disruption that is caused, right? Anytime, even if you have the best intentions at heart, saying, oh, we have pandemic learning loss, we need to add this new level of reporting to see how it's doing, right? Like that is additional thing that we're asking our teachers. One thing that happened recently is we are allowing students in Arlington County now to, if you did poorly on a test, you can take it again. And the idea behind that is, so I'm sidestepping the question slightly. The idea behind that is like the test is supposed to show that you have mastered the material. So if you're having trouble, you can try to learn the material properly the second time and take another test and demonstrate that you've learned the material. Isn't that great? Right? That is a laudable goal, but the teachers don't have time to create and administer a second test, right? And a lot of the students that can benefit the most from this don't know to take advantage of it. They don't want to take advantage. They're done with the first test. They did poorly. It is what it is. They're just dumb. That's how they feel, right? That they're not good enough anyway, so why bother, right? So how you implement these policies, how you interpret them, you want to take the spirit of the policy as much as possible. There's certain statutory things that you have to follow, but you want to take the spirit of the policy and try to implement in a way that's beneficial, right? Say, hey, you said that you want to do this, great. A, give me some funding to do it, but B, let's implement it in the context of all the other policies that we already have, right? Because even for well-meaning policies, they can be highly disruptive, and that's problematic. So when we do school board boundaries and we're moving kids around, right, it's highly disruptive. And it might be for a good reason, but it's highly disruptive. And we want to minimize that level of disruption. Sometimes it's better to put kids in a trailer and not have them move schools than to move schools. If we move schools, they should be saying, we're going to move schools for you. But because of that, instead of 24 kids in your class, we're going to have 18. right? Then the parents are like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm willing to take that trade-off. That sounds great, right? We want to make sure that the disruptions are minimized and that the benefits are clear and that these changes are telegraphed early enough that the teachers and administration can adapt and make clear policies so that they're acting instead of reacting to a lot of these policies.
Does someone else have a question? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Marjorie Clark.
I know.
And 20 years ago, the Arlington Education Association Executive Director, the teacher. How are you going to convince Governor Johnson that reducing state revenues by billions of dollars is not going to be helpful K-12 education?
I think Youngkin's going to get elected. Well, his term limited in 2025. So on some level, the problem's going to solve itself after, hopefully, in a couple of years. That's still a long time. I don't know whether from a school board we can convince him everything. It's very advantageous that we won both the state house and the state senate. I think that's going to moderate a lot of his worst impulses. Virginia, I know, underfunds our schools by a lot because of the way that they calculate it. And I think there's an effort in place to change the way that calculation is done. So that it's done by per pupil instead of by, I forget what the current methodology is, that underfunds our schools. And I feel like if the state house and state senate presents a budget, there's not much he can do to affect that. I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, but that's the answer that I have.
Would the corollary to that be that you do control local property tax rate,
Right.
and the school board and the county board negotiate how much of the revenue comes to the schools versus the rest of the county functions? That's a big factor to count.
My ignorance, but you're both fabulous. That is actually that control. I mean, like, can you change the computer system for the school? Can you do?
Yes. So I've been looking into this and what the mute this caller. So Virginia school boards have a surprising amount of undefined power and authority. Nothing that you ever want to abuse. But I think if what we do is create tools for the school board to use, we can certainly use it. If we create tools for teachers to use and it's useful for them, then they will voluntarily adopt it, right? We're not going to force people saying, you must do this. It's that here's something, instead of filling out 8 or 9 spreadsheets every week that are basically asking the same thing, here's one form that you fill out, answer these 10 questions, and we'll fill out all those things for you on your behalf. I think every teacher will be chomping at the bit to do it. All right.
Closer collaboration.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and to answer your other question, Marjorie, this is perhaps a very cynical viewpoint, but it costs about $20,000 to pay a lobbyist to change certain state laws on your behalf. It's surprisingly small. Obviously, you can't use public funds for that, but I'm sure there's someone who wants to donate to a super PAC that would love to do that on your behalf. Yeah. Yeah.
Changing, moving to updating the dinosaur as expected underneath all of this, not only as we moved out of football on the fence. That's expensive. And how are you going to, the county board right now is facing a shortfall on the county budget, right? How are you going to convince the county board to, because they control your budget, to actually allocate more money to these things when they're going to have an impact too in the operating budget of the county. And we probably can't sustain real estate taxing.
Personnel standpoint, the local universities, George Mason and Marymount, both have computer science programs, and their senior year, pretty much the entire senior year curriculum is a senior capstone design project. They're supposed to write something useful, and right now those projects are toy problems. They have a fictitious problem that they do that is not it doesn't reflect real life or how real software development is done. What I would like to do is partner with them to say, hey, I have a real problem for you guys to solve, and your students will have something that they can put on their actual resumes, right? They can't put capstone design in their resumes, no one cares. But if they have I produced this product that you can go and look at right now for Arlington School Board, and it made their lives much easier, then we can get volunteers from the universities to come do it. We'll need some other people to volunteer to be mentors and lead developers, and that we might need to have a small budget for. But there's also federal funds for basically improving the processes for local government right now that we can possibly apply for. That's obviously questionable whether we can get those things, but I think it does not take very much to do that. So I think the budget of like $1 million a year will be more. Yes, I have, and it really depends on how good the people leading the project are. So it's something that I do professionally, so I feel confident in the ability to do that, which is also why, again, I want to set the process so that it's self-sustaining long term. And if we're really, really good about it, and this is like hoping, right? If all the stars align, we do really good tools, we can sell them to other school districts and have that funding stream be self-sustaining. But that's aspirational.
I can raise. I can have comment. I interpreted your statement. He's not advocating changing our computer systems. It's more like software that's compatible with the existing computer system. Some kind of software that we need to implement, find, report, or whatever they're doing. But anyway, so that's an answer.
Yeah, that's right.
You might want to check the reflections of the chat too.
There are not.
Yeah, okay. But
Steve Hurdle?
And the reconstruction of the movement of the administrative system out of the adjacent building to the planetarium, and the division of those into the planetarium was shut down. So, they couldn't work on the adjacent building without sending out something.
Okay, that's why they shut down. That's interesting.
Right. But the superintendent didn't put in any money to have the planetarium open during the following school year.
It's open now, right? It's open now, right? Because I saw that there were. Okay.
Actually, how does the school decide? My question is, do you listen?
I'm a space nut, so yes. I'm a space nut, so yes. I think when the different companies talked about colonizing Mars, my wife asked me how long does she have left before they relocate. So yeah, yes, I fully support the planetarium. I think having a lot of these activities, both from like the nature, the I forget the name of the thing where they went for the nature hikes and all of that, and the planetarium, all those activities I think are amazing for kids to get out of the classroom and see different things. So I'm fully supportive of the planetarium.
Yeah, like, uh, if you go to the county, if you go to the county website, it brags about the world-class community. And yet, we have, we have a planetarium that's occasionally under siege, if you will, under the gravity or not given enough money out. So it's fun to make that point.
By removing all the distractions from teaching, they came to teach. They didn't. We'll never pay teachers enough to do what they do on all the sacrifices they make. We can try to make it livable, and we should make so even simple things. I think this is something I said last Wednesday. Like the fact that teachers have to ask parents for school supplies and snacks. It's not that because Arlington's wealthy enough that all the parents step up and they get their stuff, right? But the teachers have to think about it. They have to add that to their list of things that the mental load, right? It's not the actual doing it, it's the having to worry about it. And all the other things, I want to go find all the things that we can change that'll make it so that they can take away the distractions. If there's a lot of staff at CIFAX, right? I don't know what they do, I'll find out, right? If their job can instead be take away all the extra duties that are not relevant to teaching that they could do on behalf of the teachers, then that's money well spent and that's staff well used, right? Because they came to teach, they want to teach, and I want them to do teaching. I want to create collaborations between the different teachers. I hear that's a problem, so that they're not able to, they don't have time right now, but once they have time, hopefully, right, they'll have a mechanism for them to talk to each other and collaborate and improve their teaching. So basically, teachers don't leave because sometimes they leave. They're like, oh, teaching's not for me. Nothing you can do about that. But a lot of times they leave because they burn out because there's too many other things they have to fight with administration, they have to fight with parents, they have to fight with everything else, and that's not what they signed up for. So I wanted to remove all the distractions as much as possible, and that hopefully will retain them. And Arlington actually does a better job than like Fairfax, right? Arlington has a much longer average tenure than Fairfax does. So on some level, we're already doing a slightly better job, but that's all relative, right? And like for my daughter's school at Ashland, there's a huge amount of turnover this past year, and that, as a parent, really alarms me because like my daughter's teacher, she first time teaching at Ashland, she's amazing, but it took her 2 months to figure out where everything was, and you can tell how nervous she was at the beginning, and that is detrimental to the students and to the teacher. So I want to retain teachers as much as possible. Yes, sir.
Of course, wondering about your statement about the boundary setting. Is it, are you saying that they did not have the data or did not have the answer, or you didn't like the answer?
They didn't have the answers. So the data was wrong, apparently. Yes. Yes. So the questions that we had were, what other proposals did you consider? They didn't have any answer to that. Well, they didn't consider any other proposals.
Okay.
Right. And then we asked them what criteria they used to judge this proposal. And they said things about walkability, compactness, diversity, the standard answers that the school board gives. And we asked, how does the proposal that you have align with those priorities? And they did not have an answer for that. Right? Because, for example, the middle school boundary process, they had middle school kids who can see Dorothy Hand Middle School from their house. The proposal, they were going to bus those kids over to Williamsburg. So it violates their walkability criteria. There
were other criteria.
There were other criteria, but they were not. We asked them, what criteria did you use to make this proposal, and they had no answer. Right? I think they had. I mean, and I think the underlying answer was Gunston's overpopulated, oversubscribed. Williamsburg's undersubscribed. They went and took the data that they had, which had errors in it, gave it to a consultant, to outside consultant company, say, please draw us a new map. And they came back with a map, and that's it, right? They didn't have the expertise, they didn't have the time or the bandwidth to try to consider multiple proposals, actually evaluate those proposals based on the criteria that they set out. And they certainly don't have any kind of idea of how to predict future growth, right? Like from my standpoint, it's like you should run a Monte Carlo simulation based on historical data of population growth and how that affects school enrollment, and use that to determine the next 10 years, what is the most likely boundary conditions of, here's the high point, here's the low point. Can we draw school boundaries that are going to be resilient against a large amount of the highly probabilistic types of changes coming down the pipeline? I mean, there's also, someone says, can you bus kids from Gunston up to Williamsburg, right? Like, that's a proposal. It might be a terrible proposal, but they didn't have any answers on how they were going about to evaluate different proposals.
To put words in your mouth, we're essentially saying that instead of just having a consultant, you want to have a database that they could do what if
Yeah.
things with, to play with. What if we move it one block this way, one block that way? Question.
Right. And if we can show the community, the parents, say, hey, we consider these 10 possibilities, right? Each of these things are scored along these things. This one, by far, is the least worst possibility. It affects this group of people negatively, but that's the one that's going to affect the smallest number of kids negatively, and that's why we chose that one. Like, that's at least justifiable. Those parents are still going to be upset with you, right? But at least from all the parents that I talked to, the ones that were opposing the middle school boundary process, most of their attitudes, some people were like, I want my kids in the school, end of story. But others were like, I want to know that if something is negatively affecting my kids, that you fought through this process, and that was the least worst decision. That at least makes me sleep, feel better. And there wasn't any of that. And to answer your question more fully, right? When you ask question A, they have an answer A. You ask question B, you have answer B, but the answer A and answer B conflict with each other, right? They don't actually agree, that they're not self-consistent. And that's the thing that's also kind of frustrating as a parent, of just someone sitting and asking questions. Because at that point was how does the, have you considered for the moving the Spanish immersion process to Kenmore, can you have half of it at Gunston and half of it at Williamsburg, which would fix some of the problems? They're like, no, we can't hire that many teachers. That's way too many teachers to hire. And then later on, we asked, how does this affect the school at Kenmore and the classes? Because, is it going to affect, a lot of the classes at Kenmore? They're like, oh, it's only 3 classes and three teachers. And the response was, you can't hire 3 teachers at Williamsburg that can speak Spanish fluently to teach your classes in Spanish, really? Right? That seems surprising. Like those 2 answers were not incongruent. The same thing about what's criteria did you use to draw this proposal, or walkability, compactness, and then later on, because they said that's how they used to draw that proposal, and then later on they said, we asked, how does the proposal go with those criteria, and they completely deflected the question, right? Because they didn't have the answer, because it wasn't drawn on those criteria. If it was not in a transparent process.
You looked at all the past, I mean, it'd be interesting to look and see all the past occasions where there's been boundary, efforts. I know when we first moved to Arlington, when my kids started going to school, we looked at, there was the Futures program, which in my mind, as a parent, didn't go anywhere. And then after that, I have 3 kids, and there's a big age split between my first 2 and my baby. And when she went, there was a whole other boundary dispute that also was very divisive. So, I mean, because it'd be instructive probably to look at all those past events. And because it's,
But we've had disputes going from shrinking and right, 70s to Texas. The boundary disputes when the state, and one thing I want to say, few things that on the other side of it. The failure here isn't necessarily just that they didn't have data. They didn't ask their contractor for 3 options.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really normal. And a policy thing like this would ask your contractor for 3 options that fit within. We have X millions of dollars to solve this problem. We want 3 options, and you do a consultant consultative process, focus group, and develop your reality. So the question here isn't whether data is going to help the board. The data, the question to me is, what questions does the board as a group ask? Did they ask for? That's the biggest. They can have all the data in the world, but if they're already focused in for political reasons or whatever reason, right? Their own biases, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
It only helps you if you get to the point where everybody's asking. We want to see multiple options. We want to see 3 ways, 4 ways, whatever it is, right? You know, and here are criteria. And part of this, as you're explaining, it sounds to me like a failure. Failure to run your consulting agency about a proper process.
And to answer your earlier question and this question, as someone who also hired a lot of consultants, most of the times, unless you get very lucky, the best you're going to get back is the answer that you were expecting, right? You don't have to. Yeah, you can structure it, but generally speaking, they don't understand the nuances of your district as well as you do, and the more information you give them, the better answer you get. But yeah, we can sometimes. But to answer your earlier question about funding, can we take the money that we're using to pay for those consultants and build better tools instead? That will, even if you end up using consultants down the road, right? Then you have a much better basis for them to communicate answers back to you, and all of that too. So.
Make a closing statement about your website, industry, how people can get involved in getting that sort of thing.
The website's not done yet. As a technologist, that's kind of embarrassing, but it will be chenforarlington.org. Spelled however way you like. But chenforarlington.org will be my website. And as I get started with the candidacy, getting all the state organization stuff set up, I'll probably send out an email to the various folks so that people can get involved. And I could definitely need help. And on some level, the thing that I really need help on is getting all the different perspectives. Because I'm coming into this as a perspective of a parent who's frustrated with a specific aspect of freedom. And I'm aware of the myopia that can generate. So I want to know all the different problems that people have and all the different not just the problems, all the good things that happen too, right? So we don't, make sure that we don't break any of those things as we make slow incremental changes through this. I don't really have a closing statement, but thank you for listening to me, and enjoy your lunch.
Let's see. Oh, there. Let's see. Oh, yes, my hair is a little bit not as big because I rode here on my bike. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here in person on Zoom. And I am Natalie Roy. I am running for the Arlington County Board in the Democratic primary this June. And I liked it so much last time, I wanted to do it again. So here I am. I hope this is, I think I had this right. Okay. So what I'll do is, for folks who aren't familiar with me, I'll give you a little bit of a background on myself, why I'm running, and then open it up for a Q&A and get an idea of what issues people care about, what's on the top of your mind. So I am a 32-year resident here in Arlington. My husband and I raised 3 beautiful daughters here, all of whom went to Arlington County Public Schools. I've contributed to the community, to my neighborhood, to the county in a variety of different ways. I'm a business person. I'm in the business of real estate. I've been involved in a variety of different things, variety of different issues. I was a civic association president in Lyon Park. I've been a PTA president, so I do care deeply about the schools. I have been, for many years, I have decades of experience, professional experience, running nonprofits and also working in government agencies on environmental issues, on a variety of other issues. I ran a gun control group back many, many years ago. So I have a long history of community activism and leadership on a variety of different fronts, which I think it makes it, for me, something, this is something that, I love Arlington. I'm very passionate about Arlington, and I feel I could really be active and be ready to go on day one in terms of the county board. Why I'm running. And I think that's really important. I'm running to bring transparency, responsiveness, and inclusiveness to the county board. I'm committed to common sense leadership that brings us all together. And that's really important. To me, the mantra of the county board should be, what can we do for you? You know, what are your issues? Not, here's what we think. Here's our vision. Here's where we think we're going to go, what path we're going to go down. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important to get buy-in, to get community support for whatever you do. There's a number of issues. There's tons of issues on the county level. That's why it's important for me to field questions here, get ideas of what you all are, you know, what's top of mind. But I'll just go through a couple of really high priorities for me. So housing, that's why I got involved way back when. Housing is critical, affordable housing. I couldn't support more, promoting diversity. I do not believe, and this will come as no surprise, that the county's current path forward, which is a developer-driven, investor-driven policy, is the way to go. It's a private program. It's not going to get us the affordability. It's not going to get us the diversity that was promised in the very beginning. I think there's other ways forward, and that is something that I really think is sending us in another, sending us backwards. Yes, Missing Middle, which is now actually was rebranded to Expanded Housing Options. It was rebranded because it really isn't about what it was initially set out to do, which, if you remember, was about essential workers, about teachers, about firefighters, about police, about folks who had trouble affording property in Arlington. And so that's something that I think that we need to take a pause. We need to really think really strongly about, because old homes, old buildings should be looked at as opportunities, not as instant teardowns. I mean, I'm in a neighborhood right now in Lyon Park where we are really, where I think one of the big neighborhoods, Ground Zero, where we have lots of teardowns. And I do think that we're getting rid of our affordable housing stock very quickly by doing this. And I think that we need to look at what we're doing, because we're losing part of our history. Another big issue for me is environment and energy. I come from a big energy family. My husband actually and I met, and environment family. My husband and I met working in the 80s for the same clean water group. That's how we started. He is still working, saving the world. He works on climate change 24/7 on Capitol Hill. And I worked for many years. I worked for Clean Water Action Project. I started my career there, and League of Conservation Voters. I later ran the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable and also the Clean Water Network. So it's a passion of mine. I have a deep, lifelong commitment to environment, to leaving our grandkids, our kids, and our grandkids. I have 3, by the way, and it's a world worth living in. And I think that's really important. And what that means for all of us, for the environment, it means a variety of things, and it's a wide range. Tree canopy. What's happening in Arlington? We are losing our tree canopy all across the board, everywhere. We need stronger protections on that front, to the point that, and these are things that you'd have to potentially go to Richmond for in terms of getting authority, but look at bonding programs that they're doing in other places like Vienna. We need to be looking at those kind of programs. Open space, parks. These are important community benefits. I have been part of situations where in my neighborhood and others where we've tried to make sure that community benefits include parks and open spaces. That's important for quality of life. Environment also means I'm a biker, as you heard in the beginning. That's my business. I try to do as much biking as I can to show people homes and in the county and elsewhere. But making sure that we have pedestrian friendly and protected bike lanes throughout the county. Making sure, in addition, I'm also very passionate about glass recycling. I used to be the glass recycling director for the Glass Packaging Institute. I actually thought it was really a shame that we got rid of that program curbside. I understand in terms of cost, but I also think it's something that we should be looking at. So there's a number of things. I also think if we're looking at energy, we're looking at county fleets. We're looking at conversions. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can on that front. And that means converting from gas to electric. And also means with EVs and chargers, making sure that that many places have, I mean, around the county, our residents have access to EV chargers to make sure that we're promoting the most environmentally sound types of transportation that we can do. So that's, and then looking also, by the way, at public transportation, because there's all kinds of overlap here. Making sure that we have adequate public transportation for seniors, for our students, all throughout the county, not just on the corridor. And that's really important. And that's very important in terms of development and where we go from here. So that's a big issue. Another big issue, just to go through a couple, because there's a litany of things that the county board works on, is commercial vacancy rates. We all know, everybody's expecting a big hit with our real estate taxes, with our tax assessment, me included. And so one of the things, and one of the reasons is because our commercial revenue is going down. So what should we be doing? We should be thinking outside the box. What I liked about what I heard in the first speaker is start thinking about things, asking questions. That's the kind of board member I want to be. Not just somebody who says, oh yeah, everybody supports this, I'm going to go along with that. I'm going to ask those questions. So a question is, why aren't we looking into conversions in our buildings more actively and more aggressively? And that means looking for affordable housing possibilities. And I know it's challenging across the board and it's expensive. Why aren't we actively doing a better job of repurposing some of these buildings and working with the private sector on that? And I think one of the other big roles for the county board and for county board members is as a convener. And again, I heard some of this earlier, but about private-public partnerships. Why aren't we doing more? When the Key Bridge Marriott was closed, got condemned, and that was that was an opportunity lost. Why aren't we looking at that building and saying, okay, what could we do on that? I think it's 5.5 acres of prime property. Why can't the county, and I understand about costs, I understand about budget, but why can't we use our role as a convener to see what we can do there? The same goes for that building that was just in the paper, in the news about going into foreclosure, the USA Nestle's building. These are, and again, of course, this is something that many people know, that the Rouse Estate, by Eden Center, there's an opportunity. People wanted to look at that as for parkland and other opportunities. So I think these are the kind of things that the county board should be looking at, being innovative, thinking outside the box, and asking those questions. So the commercial vacancy rate is one that I think, and I joke. I mean, I have joked in the past. I know I've heard people talk, well, we can make pickleball courts in these facilities. Well, you can do a lot of things. I think that we need to really think creatively. And for an example, I'm very enamored. I love the fact that we have the Black Heritage Museum of Arlington here on Columbia Pike. It's a small space, temporary space. They're looking for permanent space. We should be all over that. The county should be negotiating with the private sector folks and saying, hey, what can we do to make this work for this jewel in our county? Because it's actually potentially a revenue producer as well. It's education, it's everything. You could do many more things with that. Those are the kind of things that we should be looking at and we should be putting energy into. So on the commercial side, I think there's lots of room for opportunity. And the last thing, again, there's many other issues, and that's why I'll open it up for question. I actually think a county board and a county board member should be an advocate. That's the role, not only in Richmond, but everywhere. And so I'll give you, and then a great example is the recent pronouncement that we might have a new stadium here in Potomac Yard National Landing area. Now it's in Alexandria. I did come out with a statement on it, and it's a project that does impact Arlington. It'll impact us in traffic. It's going to impact us in many different ways. It's going to impact Crystal City, National Landing. It's going to impact anybody who lives in that area. It's also an environmentally sensitive property. It's a floodplain prone type of property. And we should be asking all kinds of questions. Why do we not have a seat at the table? It's not like it's just Alexandria. Arlington should have a seat at the table, and we're a stakeholder. And that's what I mean by being an advocate. So I think, those are the kind of issues, and there's many more that I can talk about. The arts, public safety, you name it. I think there's many I mean, the role of the county board member is it's wide ranging. There's lots of issues out there, but the biggest role is to be transparent and to tell it like it is. What you see is what you get with me. And I think also to make sure that we're hearing from people across the board, across the county. So it's not just coming from 2100 Clarendon Boulevard, but we're going out to all the communities. You know, one of the things I talked about last campaign, and I still believe it today, is that the county board should be having satellite meetings. We shouldn't only have them in the hearing rooms, but we should go out to the community in different places around for the year. It's hard to do. I granted it's not, you know, you can't just easily make that happen, but it was something that really a lot of folks were very supportive of, because you go into a neighborhood and you actually learn what matters. And that also, it means for development projects, I think if you're on a commission, you know, and you're dealing with development, you have to go out there and actually look and see what you're talking about. I'm on, I have been on the sports commission. I'm currently on the JFAC commission. I do think that all of those, there needs to be much more, you know, boots on the ground. You need to be out in the community. And that makes a lot of that work. That makes, to me, the most sense. And then that also goes for staff. It's not just the county board, it's staff. You know, county manager and the staff is one piece. You got the county board. There should be a lot more, you know, meeting in terms of ideas and being out in the public. And then also, and I'll just end with the school board. I do think the schools and the county need board need much tighter collaboration and working together. There's no question. The big chunk of the board's budget is for the schools. Schools are critically important. And as I said, 3 of my kids all went through all the county board. All went through all county schools here and had a great time. They went to Long Branch Elementary, Thomas Jefferson Middle School, and Washington, at the time, Washington Lee, turned into Washington, and then changed to Washington Liberty. And my husband, I'm proud to say, was on the renaming committee. So anyway, with that, I want to thank you for inviting me here today, and I will field any questions that you might have.
Yeah.
Oh, and one last thing. I guess I'll do this at the end, but my website, because it's natalieforarlington.com. So there you go.
And the 4 is the number.
Natalie for Arlington. Oh, it's FOR. No, it's the. Oh. Yeah, we did that. I don't know. I should have done the 4. It would have been more exciting.
Well,
Natalie, may I ask a
question? Oh,
question?
hi. I got somebody, Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Two basic questions.
Okay.
The first one is, are there going to be 1 vacancy or 2 vacancies on the county board?
Okay, Karen just asked about the vacancies. No, that's the first one. There's a second one. Okay. Yes. So there's 1 spot that'll be open there's 1 seat open that will be open, and there's an incumbent who hasn't made a decision about whether she's going to run or not. Exactly. So it's only 1, and it will be ranked choice voting. They brought that back for the primary. Is that your second question?
That's my second question. I wanted to know, there was a survey that went around that people commented on, and as my recollection is, there were approximately over 60% of the people who answered the survey were against ranked choice voting because it's so confusing how they arrive at those, 2 people. And so, I mean, I'm not against ranked choice voting or any new thing, but I don't know that it adds much.
Okay, I'll answer that. Okay. No, I'd be happy to answer that. So yeah, I'll repeat it. Karen is asking about ranked choice voting, and she pointed out that last election, which of course I'm intimately familiar with. Yes. Last primary. I'm sorry, not the fall general, but that there were 2 spots open, and it was confusing for folks based on how that worked out. And I will be I'm very consistent in my position on ranked choice voting. It's I actually spoke. I gave a statement in front of the board in December of 23, last December, about when they were making decisions about bringing it back for the primaries only. So ranked choice voting is coming back for only primaries. They're going to, there is word, supposedly it's on the agenda because the agenda's not out yet for January 20th for the next board meeting to talk about it for the general. My position is this. We lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My husband and I met here. We went up to Cambridge. We then came back, and in Cambridge, we had ranked choice voting. And as I've said publicly, it was fine. It was well run. You ranked the entire slate. Everyone, it was, there were no issues. It was a different story here in Arlington in terms of what happened. It was confusing. There were 2 spots. There were only 3 ranked positions, and there also was, by all accounts, not enough training that went around countywide. There were a number of people who, said something. So my position was this: I support ranked choice voting. I knew that I knew how it worked, but I do not support doing it for only primaries and not for generals. And I think that's there's no other way to describe it. That's very undemocratic. You have to either do the same type of system for both, or you don't do it at all. And the board voted for just to put it in for primaries, but did indicate that 2 of the members indicated they might take it up, could very well take it up in January at the next meeting and make it for both. So that's it. But right now it's ranked choice voting for only the primary. And we can talk about the values of ranked choice voting. Again, when I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it worked fine. It was a good way to get the pulse of the community in terms of how it was run. I think it was night and day in terms of how it was done in Massachusetts and how it was done here in Arlington. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, what was missing here?
A couple things missing here. You didn't rank the entire group. There wasn't enough education out there. By many communities were complaining that they just didn't understand how this all worked. There was also confusion about only 2 spots open. That was the biggest confusion about what happened. Many people didn't realize that when they voted number 1, that their number 2 was not going to ever be counted. They didn't realize that. And that was valid. That was that was a big issue that people had. So, and I agree with that. But again, when my experience with it up north was a different situation. But right now it's only for primaries, and I do think that's wrong.
Well,
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Thank you. Sorry. He said, thank you for your question. Hey.
Education this past round. And I've been a supporter of ranked choice voting since 1970, and I've done it has been successfully on the Cornell campus for elections since 1970, which resulted in Josh Katcher getting elected. They've been using my computer program there for 3 decades.
In Cornell?
Yeah.
Okay.
But which is the question I have for you, is there's a Civic Federation has come up with their own package reforms and committees to 7 members, it's having them all it's staying here and so on. I don't think the Civic Federation did a good job of incorporating to Democrats and their deliberations in where you stood on their
on the Tiger Report, right? Sure.
While you answer my question, I'm going to go around and speak at the cookies of all the different
Oh.
in the room.
So everybody on Zoom, I don't know how many folks are on Zoom, but he's distributing cookies. Right? And you're going to get cookies to people on Zoom, but you're going to get it delivered. They'll see. All right. So I will answer that question. You want me to answer that question about so I was just asked about the Civic Federation proposals to expand the board, and actually expand it and have districts and have everybody vote at the same time in terms of
all the positions up at the same time, similar to, that's what you asked me, Massachusetts. And I would say, and I've told this to some of the architects of that, I'm very supportive of opening up to expanding the board and to looking into district representation if it can, districts, if that can be done cohesively and that can work out. I do think it's important to make sure that the county board represents, it's at large, but it represents everybody. And that's, and anything we can do along those lines, I'm totally in support of. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, Marjorie?
Following on
Sure.
your only county manager form of government in the country.
Mm-hmm.
The General Assembly can go to the General Assembly and say, would you please make this change for county manager forms of government?
Mm-hmm.
And downstate they go, oh, that's just Arlington. Let them have what they want. Because nobody else is involved. So we have hundreds of special legislation pieces
Right.
that allow us to do things we want to do. Like our utilities commission is the county board. And we have higher standards for infant daycare. We have all kinds of
Right.
things we want to walk in.
Right. 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 To meet the right. Mm-hmm.
Losing all those things, or having to say to the General Assembly members, oh, by the way, you've got to reintroduce all of these things for something that is not a county management government, because we won't need that
Mm-hmm.
in order to see what we enjoy, and most of us don't. I think it's a question that when I worked on the child care legislation,
Uh-huh.
Exactly what the chairman of the committee said to me. The only reason I can support this is because I know it can only apply to Arlington.
Right.
Because if this were to spend south of the Rappahannock, I'd oppose it. We were opposing for whole hunting. For children and daycare. But that's all I'm saying. It's a really valid.
No, it's a valid concern. I think there's trade-offs. I mean, there's trade-offs. I think you have to balance, you have to, I think it goes also to the point of the sort of long-term visioning for Arlington. What is that vision? And I think you're looking at, there's a variety of different things that are out there that we have, that we enjoy. And then what are the other things that we need? There's a balancing act here. For instance, I mentioned tree canopy, and being tougher on, making sure we have tougher protections for our tree canopy. So you'd have to look and see, where does that fit in? And I do think getting feedback from people countywide is so important, because there's what you just mentioned. There's a lot of things on that list that people actually don't know. And I think that's also about being an advocate of Arlington. I love living here. And I think that part of the job is making sure people know, hey, you can't, it's challenging. So there's going to be all these things people want. And here's all the things that we have. And I think people don't even know that. And then we've got busy people here, people working on a variety of different things. So I think there's a lot of things about marketing all the great things that Arlington has, and then looking and see, okay, where are the trade-offs and what do we really need? And again, looking at some really serious issues like, climate change. And how does that going to really affect the county? And how do we actually deal with that? So anyway, I appreciate that. Yeah. Yes. Do you have a question?
David.
Sure.
Really came about from a government in 1920. It just passed our 100th anniversary, 2020. But that's probably late. And we have a county manager form of government. And they put that in place for certain reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that some of the other forms of government, the cities and towns and other counties, have other powers that Arlington does not have.
Right.
Patrick Hope is in the Civil Federation urging Patrick Hope and the delegation in Richmond to put forth authorities for Arlington the other counties have, not to change our form of government, because it works well for Arlington, but to give us authorities that some of it we may want that the other counties have. So it's all.
No, that's a good point. And I mean,
And I didn't get any in your statement any advocacy for changing a form of government.
well, what you detected, and actually, I was going to comment on what you just said. One of the things that when I go door to door, and I have hit a lot of doors, and I'll be hitting a lot of doors during this campaign. I hear people complaining that they feel the staff's not listening to them, or they feel the county board, county board hasn't listened to them. I do think one of the things with our form of government is that the county manager will say, well, I can't do it. I have to, check in with the county board. And the county board goes, well, I'll have to check in with staff and the county manager. So I think there's room here for us to improve on that, because it's sort of deflecting who's in charge, where's the authority coming from, and where's the direction coming from. And I think that's really important. And I think it's important, like, for instance, from everything from our people's phone calls being answered. I mean, when I call up and I don't get somebody, to respond to me for a week, that's a problem. I mean, there's some issue. I mean, people tell me their permits are taking forever. That's a problem. And I'll give you another example. I mean, when I look at my tax assessment and I'm paying more than a house on a property with square footage way more than mine, and a lot size over 3 times as big, I think that's a problem. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to be looking at. Again, I think Arlington is a great place, and I think we have a lot, we have improvement we can make. That's what I'm saying. And so I think, and that's where I'm coming from. There's another question from somebody. Oh, right here.
I just wanted to address something that's not specific. I want you. I wasn't here for your last document, but I saw your bicycle on it. Yep.
Right.
Really. Any other sign that I saw, dozens of signs, that one had a message. When I saw that bicycle, this one is probably for the environment. I'm an environmentalist. I'm on board.
That's great.
And I think
Thank
that's a brilliant, it's just an image. Didn't even say anything else. But I wanted to say that Arlington, besides the whole nation, great. And even in Arlington, we're in a privileged place, highly educated,
Right.
affluent compared to, think of the communities in this country that can't afford bicycle trails or to pioneer them. This got great trails here. And I'm just saying that those kinds of things might give you, that's why one reason I want you to be winning, because you'll be a national figure in some ways at least. And it will show that as we move into more and more of this climate crisis, and it's coming, we have not had hot weather. We have not had in Greece, they burning down the fires ravaging Europe last summer in the hottest time on record. We are lucky. We haven't, but at the same time, you're very deep and involved in this. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I mean, don't you think that as a leader of Arlington, you might at times make the news with some of your.
Well, I don't think I'll be, well, I do think my bike, and I was very deliberate in terms of putting that on there, and I use it in my business as well.
Yeah.
I do think we all care. I think, what you said earlier, I mean, Arlington's a well-educated community. We care. We're very, I use the word progressive still. I mean, we care about the environment, and climate change is an existential risk. I mean, it's one of probably our greatest challenges, and for our kids and our grandkids. And so I think it's really important. And when I got involved and when I decided to run, which is the first time I ran for anything like this, for the last go around, it was because I was angry. That's a good word. I was confused and about the whole developer sort of driven housing issue. And I thought, wow, that's just going to densify everything. And there's no impact statements. There's no studies on the environment. There's no studies on our tree canopy. And I mean, and granted, we've had issues anyway. Before that, and we had no studies on schools. There was just, we weren't doing our homework. And I said this earlier. I really do think that old homes, some tear downs are tear downs, but there's a lot of places that need. We're losing our history. I think that we can really do things by recycling and rehab. Yes.
And
Lower the starting
Mm-hmm.
of other people who are really super busy. But that like there's big so much tree canopy and if up until try out both branches of the luckily it was really a small amount of water. And if it hadn't rained, there was like how are we dealing with that? Like people be putting bird baths on their backyard, there's so much water starts out. What are we going to deal with it? And then if you go out to the Orthodox Church on the, what the Greek Orthodox Church is on the, it's like there is
It is perfect. Mm-hmm.
It's so it doesn't. It's just, but it's still above the ground. And why can't we make that a real creek? Like, why can't we take the concrete out? And it'd be expensive, but it's fair enough. It's close creek.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're bringing it, so no, I mean, that's.
The deer, the rabbit, the bird, everything will die.
Right. I think you just bring up a good point about climate change and about the environment, about nature. We need to make it out of focus. I mean, we need to look and say, it's not, how do we balance all this? And just some simple, I mean, not even simple, but challenging things would be, community benefits with these big high rises. Like in our neighborhood, when I got involved with Lime Park, I became the VP of development initially. And we had this big development that was happening. So, I mean, for an old shopping center, it was on Pershing Drive. And and what happened with that is that one of the things that we wanted as a community, we wanted a park as part of that new development on Pershing Drive, near where you used to live, Margie. And we were also, there was a number of us who were saying this is not exactly smart growth. And that, because it was right outside the Clarendon sector plan. And it was a very big, issue. The board approved a zoning change for it. And by a vote of 3-2, I'll never forget. But what was interesting about that is we didn't get that park. We didn't get 3 bedrooms, which is what you want for families. Now we're having there's another project underway at Days Inn. And that's another one where the developer was asked at one of our community meetings, well, will any of these be 3 bedrooms? Because as everybody knows, with the housing shortage, we need housing for families. And the comment back was, it's too expensive. That's not beneficial, financially beneficial. And I wonder, and I mean, it's what would happen if the board had said, okay, we're going to grant this, and some of it's by right. We're going to do what we can to make sure we have more 3 bedrooms here. And the project I was just talking about that happened when I first, like many years ago now, I mean, number of years ago, that project was flipped, like about after the zoning change was given, it was flipped and a national, entity bought it. And again, we never got our park. So I think those are the kind of things that we should be better at. So when you giving bonus density and anything else, we need to be saying, okay, we want some green space. We need green space. And we're not just talking pocket parks, which are the corner of some, some intersection.
I did not vote for you.
Oh, that's sad.
I might be persuaded.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Before the change, the aesthetic for tear down was great to build, to replace these, what I call the six bedroom, six bath, 6,000
Mm-hmm.
for $2 or $3 million. Has that changed?
Go for it.
Right over here. Okay, it didn't come in under missing middle. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a duplex. And let me tell you, neither half of that duplex is coming in under $1 million.
Okay, without
And that's a duplex.
there'd be a 3 or 4.
No, it will be the same. It's because it's in South Arlington. It's not going to be the same value as North Arlington. It's south of Route 50. It's going to be a different price. But the single family 6 and 6 next to me was $1.7 million. That was right next to me. This one will be like $1 million for each half, and it'll be a duplex. It didn't solve missing middle, and it's huge, and it's got much more concrete coverage. But you'll drive it around South 8th and South 9th
Uh-huh.
between Glebe and George Mason.
And also, right.
It's on the right-hand side as you go towards George.
So to answer, and the question for people on Zoom is about, I mean, literally you're asking me about McMansions, you're asking me about EHO, you're asking me about what was missing middle, which is now EHO, which I actually do a periodic update newsletter on EHO. So when I got involved, this issue sort of, loomed large. I didn't understand how, when you just turn it loose to the private sector, that this would then create affordable housing. Right. Oh, it was from the beginning. And anyway, from the beginning, the original goal of this was affordable housing. It was essential workers, but that's fine. I don't, it's all good. There's also, so that said, we have this, we also have these big homes that you're talking about, and we have lot coverage loopholes, which we need to deal with. And regardless of where you stand on what was missing middle, EHO, lot coverage loopholes are really important. So for instance, you could have and that includes, for instance, in my neighborhood, I'm an R6 zoning district, and there are properties and I'm 35 square feet, something like that, shy of 6,000 square foot lot. So I'm in an R6, but there's other properties in my district, other homes in my community that are bigger than 6,000 square feet. But they have the same requirements in terms of what they can put on their lot as I do. That means they can put more on there. And so the question is, we should be looking at lot coverage, we should be looking at setbacks for everybody, all across the board, to protect the trees and to actually make it so that we have a livable, it's all about livability. So, and again, about EHO and everything else, one of my bigger issues in the very beginning was the fact that there were no, we had invited, one of the board members came to our community meeting, October of 22, before I ever even dreamed about getting in a county board race. And the question was asked to him, it was both for Ashland Heights and Lyon Park. Well, are you doing environmental impact studies of these? Because there'll be more cars, there'll be more people, there'll be more drain on infrastructure. And the comment was, no, we're going to do this and we're going to go forward. We're going to see what the impacts are. We're going to test the waters. And a number of us after that meeting were like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. Where's the planning sort of, regimen, that the kind of work that the county does?
They didn't do it. They didn't. They didn't. The entire county. That they got.
Okay, so do you have a question? Yes.
Was equity. Because the only place that was the place that wanted on these were those were person. And so one of the main for a lot of people was equity.
Well, so, and I will, and so did somebody else have a question too? Um, yeah, we could. So, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Mhm.
That's my first. But I'm going back to something that I mentioned to Natalie the last time we were lunch together about. Because I think it's time for the county board to undertake a look at the whole book. The general land use plan. Because the general land use plan is really old.
Right.
It stands back from when we were developing the RV code. Old. And everything has changed, virtually everything. And we have to start looking in a comprehensive way, not at what we want this vision, but it's the land use vision of how much area do we want in Arlington for free space, and what are the legal changes that have to happen? What are we going to do to serve mom and pop businesses in Arlington for fundamental characteristics of this corridor, Columbia Pike? And all of that gets folded into the glove. It's R5, R6, are these zoning categories for what we see now? What do we do to encourage more? And that all comes out of, and a lot of the things we can't solve come out of the underlying GO law, the general land use plan. And so we really have to, I think it's time to go back.
I agree.
I may be the only person arguing this, but.
Yeah, I agree.
Change can't happen because we have this underlying legal.
We need a more comprehensive, holistic way of looking at things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to third.
That's not going to really destroy any of their because it's not going to do a whole lot. And
I'm sorry. Oh, would you? Okay, go ahead.
The but it's also not about making health work, right? So, and I think the problem with that, the underlying problem is that there's all these attempts at incremental changes. Individually doesn't work, right? How it's going, it doesn't work. So the problem with the 3 bedrooms is because of window requirements, and the same thing with office space conversions, right? You have to have 2 stairwells by law, by code, that restricts how much each apartment building can have windows, so that limits them to 2 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be a holistic change, and even if you do increase EHO housing, right? The houses are the same size lots. That means the houses are equal size apart. That means you need that much road space, that much car space. You can't walk anywhere. You still can't bike anywhere. It doesn't matter how many people living there. It doesn't increase. Like you lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has very dense housing.
Goodbye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. You live in Cambridge. I live there too. Has very dense housing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at, you ever go to like all the different European towns you enjoy visiting and vacationing at, everything is much, much closer and everything's walkable.
Right.
And that requires a fundamental change on how you do use.
So I agree. But a little big issue. I mean, one of the things I just want to make a point of, it's 58. There's a cap of 58 permits a year. It sunsets in 4 years. It's 58. And that's not just 58 units. It's more. It's whatever it's a minimum of 1 bedroom each. It's more like it's 100 and it's over 100 units right now, and it could be more. That's at a minimum. And the cap could disappear. Who knows? So, and it's setting. It's very random. It's not comprehensive. It's not planned. So there's some real issues with that kind of program. Did you have a question too?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like 3 blocks down.
Right.
Parking.
That's going to affect a lot.
I could not agree
And
more.
I mean, I'm not really against it. I find it something I think, like you say, we should be considering. There will be impacts.
I could not agree more. I think we're not a bystander. We need to be a stakeholder. And I said that, I asked a bunch of questions in the statement. I mean, we need to, I mean, traffic's the big one. I've heard from people who are season ticket holders who say this is terrible because we won't be able to easily get there. I don't know what we're going to do. I've heard people who are surrounding areas saying we're not going to be able to get the national. I mean, we're going to have some issue. There'll be some traffic concerns. There's going to be environmental concerns. And the big thing, and the other thing is, and we're all taxpayers. I mean, Arlington's taxpayers, the state. I mean, is this the best use of our taxpayer funds? I mean, we're sponsoring, we're helping sponsor whatever, give benefits to a billionaire enterprise. You know, the owner and and that company, Monumental. So I think we need to be asking those questions. Is this the best use of our money? And I've heard many legislators questioning that as well. All right, so thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being on. Thank you all for your time. And my website is natalieforarlington.com. You can also email me at natalieforarlington@gmail. And if you need any more information, you can definitely contact me there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we will have our next lunch the second Tuesday of February. I don't remember what the date is, but it's right in there. The second Tuesday of February. Tell all your friends. If you're not getting my emails, please email me at rcplatt@gmail.com to get on the list. We want to thank you all for coming online and otherwise. I'm sorry for the late start, but we did have technical problems, but ultimately we got a camera and we got a microphone, so that's good for something. We want to thank both Chen, Ling and Natalie Roy for coming and talking to us, and we'll see you next month. Thank you. Yes. Yes.